Well, welcome everyone. It's Evan here with
And James?
James. Yeah. And I guess here is kind of an elusive term for us sometimes
Mm.
because neither of us is here relative to the other person. So I'm in Boston in my home, and James is in London in his home. But we thought for our post of the month, given that our main goal at this stage is to produce this EP that we're working on, which will be out at the end of the year, um, we've mentioned that rather than being able to post our usual kind of YouTube cover type stuff, full on kind of music videos, since we're really in the thick of this process right now. What people are really supporting for us is that record. So we want to keep posting content, and we thought we could have a nice little kind of two-way interview here about how the process has gone, where we're at in that process, where we're going, and kind of free form, but just give you yet another window into what we're doing and what's in our heads, and even if
Mm.
there's a few warts involved, which there always are in collaborative projects. Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. So kind of where are we at right now, James? And we can kind of work our way
Yeah.
backwards from that,
Well, it's
maybe.
it's it's that sad moment where, we've again spent this 2 week sum of time together to work on the album, and now we've separated to our various countries again. But that doesn't mean that the momentum isn't still going. We're just having to keep it up separately. So rather than it be a, 9 a.m. kick out of bed, it's now like an email being like, okay, we have to keep the momentum, we have to do some mixes. And on top of that, we're battling a bit of, I guess, return home. I don't know, sickness, if that's a thing. Like, some people are picking up the pieces, back at their old jobs. So JB's like right in the thick of doing this series of gigs. So it's sort of back to our fragmented process of putting things together. But I think we're in a great place musically. We this 2 week stretch enabled us to just completely storm through a bunch of original material. We've recorded 6 tracks, I think that's right. Which, whether or not all of them make it to the EP is yet to be decided. We're at a very healthy place. So now it kind of comes down to wading through Andrew's hard drive and assembling all the pieces and maybe doing some loose punch-ins from where we are now. Have I missed anything out there, Evan? I think that's sort of the
No,
current climate.
I think it's true. I mean, one of the things, I mean, you mentioned wading through the hard drive and all that, and that's
Mm.
definitely true. But we also had, I think we did a pretty good job of at least maybe up until the last couple days where we really felt the time pressure because it's like whatever we don't do here, we in a way literally can't do. But most of the time, we were able to like pretty much determine that the takes that we kind of had on the top were sort of the best
Yeah,
takes. And maybe with fresh ears, listening back, something might hit you a weird way, and you might kind of hunt for another take. But
yeah,
I do feel like we did a good job of, especially given that we were recording together, trying to get what was the best like ensemble performance in each time. So hopefully that cuts down on like I don't actually think we have like
too
hours and
much.
hours of, audio to go through, but
And just to like reiterate, in case people didn't know, like we flipped from one recording technique to the complete opposite, thanks to being in person. So we used to do everything multi-tracked, and then we'd spend time going back and forth, and we'd layer it up. But this time, since we were all in the studio together, we did that old process that people don't even seem to do anymore, which is everyone essentially at the same time, with the exception of Evan, who would dub in the bass separately and then leads as well, just to give us flexibility. But it was a fantastic experience just recording all together around 5 different microphones, but at the same time, and sometimes without headphones either. We'd just sing, and then it would be complete in itself. So there's some kind of there's one particularly exposed track on the EP in a good kind of way, which is in its sort of rawest form. It's like, here, this is what accent sounds like live. So and we don't know how it's going to sound because we're still at the point of just having recorded it, but So we're looking forward to kind of exploring how finally everything's going to glue together, hopefully by the end of the year to get it to you guys. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, totally. I don't think until this process, in my all of my experience recording with ensembles or on my own, that I've used the term "in the air" so much. It wasn't a term that I really used ever, but you mentioned taking the headphones off and
Yeah,
singing
yeah,
things actually just because in that case it was a song that was like very rubato and didn't have we didn't have to sing to a click, so there was no real reason to have have the headphones on. So to be able to say we're just going to sing it in the air, and it's sort of like,
yeah,
wow, what a novel concept! Like actually just hearing voices and reacting
yeah.
instead of hearing what's in
It's
this
so
this
great.
very when you have the headphones on, it's like in a way it's like anything that you're hearing is it's a replication, it's like an approximation of space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even if you're
You-
singing with headphones and the people are physically around you singing, you're not hearing that, you're hearing what's in your headphones.
Right.
So
You're at the mercy of the sound engineer as well, like what they're feeding you. And
yeah.
I'm sure it changes the way that we acoustically hear ourselves as well. It's a very like in your head, insular experience. So to take them off from time to time. And also, we did a lot of, uh, how to phrase this. We often pushed ourselves to sing as much as we could as well. Like just the energy of trying to capture um, big phrases, big chunks, to which I think again adds to that authenticity, adds to that accent sound that we've been wanting to capture for so long. So I think this EP is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of its predecessor.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, singing long phrases or singing whole verses or whole sections also is not that's not a crazy concept, and certainly when you perform live you have to do a whole song in one pass.
Right.
um, but the challenge for us here was that the songs were themselves were new, and we'd all work to sort of rehearse on our own and demo some parts, so it was as
Hmm.
much in the memory as possible. But it changes and gets enhanced the moment we're together. And I posted a video a few days ago for our patrons that kind of showed, it was like it was 7 minutes of us tracking one of the ballads that we were doing without headphones, the one that JB had written. And you can see, like, from the beginning we were working on one passage, but from the beginning to the end, it's like, these little 5% like incremental
Yeah.
improvements, like with each take. So it's not like we do something bad, or, if it were
Sometimes not
alive.
even that. Like
Yeah,
one
it's,
percent
yeah, it could be.
imperfections.
It could be. But it's sort of like someone has an idea you want to try. It's like, it's a blessing and a curse, because it's like, well,
Yeah.
everybody's here. If I have this idea and I want to hear how it sounds, if I make everybody do it, like, they're all here and they can do it with me, which you can't do when you're recording alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what the point was of me saying that necessarily, but it's
Well, I don't know. I think it highlights also the fact that like it enabled us to bring out and record aspects of ourselves that we were previously not capable of because of multi-tracking. Like that energy, that ability to add something in. Oh, I think actually maybe we should change this chord, or maybe we should add some dynamics, or maybe we should fizzle out here, or maybe we should make this sound less or more perfect. Like, and we could try them out in real time,
yeah,
as opposed to if we wanted to attempt that in our usual situation of the five different countries, it would probably take like a week to just
yeah,
re-record everyone
yeah,
with the new idea. So, and then at that point it's like, I can't be bothered, I'm satisfied. So in that sense, that's also a blessing and a curse, because then you've got six different people wanting to pull six different ways and have the ability to. So we had
yeah,
to sort of move as one entity, and of course there'd be times where it would, someone would push it this way or this way, and it'd get a bit shaky. But we've arrived at a point where I think everyone is extremely proud. So I think that's awesome.
Was there any time during that where, whether, can you think of any example where, like, we were trying different musical things, even if it's sort of half a dozen of one, six of
Mm.
the other? Is that the phrase? Six of one,
Yeah,
half a
that's.
dozen of the other. Where it's like, why are we spending time on this? Or,
um,
did it usually
that's a
seem
good
valid to
question.
you? Or
I don't know. Have you thought of any? There were definitely some moments where we just spent ages. But I need to think
For
of
me, it
exact
was always
example.
about if I ever felt like maybe we were spending too much time, it was usually, and this is me, my own, because of kind of my own biases about things, but like it was usually about tuning, where
Yeah,
like, you know, I wasn't recording, so it was with you guys most of the time. So it was five people trying to nail two, chords, every chord in tune at the same time, which that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. But they're also
yeah,
really hard chords. So it's like if you have five notes and like one person is a couple cents off, and it's not, it depends on what that is in order to sort of like have this feeling that it actually sets the chord off. Obviously it depends on what your function is. I mean, if it's like, well, I can't quite tell if that chord is major or minor now. Well, we know that's pretty
yeah,
important. But I was having the benefit of like kind of just listening. I mean, I was engineering the session. Sometimes I would take my headphones off too, since I was actually tracking in the control room. We were tracking in the control room, which meant that I couldn't be listening through monitors. I had to listen through headphones since they were recording right next to me. But
mm,
sometimes I would just take my ears off and listen in the air, to use that term again. And then, assuming that what we're really capturing by singing all together is kind of what you're hearing in the air, like sometimes, there's just a lot of masking going on where it's like when it's like shoved directly into your ear and you're also mixing your part up a little bit higher than everybody else's. Everyone had different mixes. It's
yeah,
like, you can really get a false sense of like, that was off. But it's going to go, in the end, it's going to go by in 20 milliseconds and you're going to be like, I don't know,
yeah.
did I notice that or not? So,
Mm. Did anything feel different for you also working on the original material as opposed to um, covers or things like that? Was there anything that kind of felt new or fresh? I mean, it's hard to differentiate that from
yeah.
like the space, of us all together, but also the fact that the repertoire is all new and all fresh. So
Um,
how was that?
that's a, that's a tough question because, I mean, for the most part, when we do our covers, we like really kind of destroy the original.
Yeah,
So it's very different, I think, from what would be the trend in contemporary a cappella, where not to say that every group does this, because for sure that's not would not be a true statement. But many groups, almost their goal is to like recreate the instrumental version with only the voice. Certainly, a lot of like contemporary a cappella multi-trackers are doing that, where they explicitly show you like they write the word guitar on the guitar video, and then there's
yeah, yeah,
I can't do that
yeah,
sound, but
yeah,
so you know, given that we're usually in a situation where we're not trying to like recreate something that already existed, I don't. It's almost arbitrary what you call a cover sometimes. And when I think about it, it's sort of like, well, our covers aren't really covers most of the time. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I feel like we always try to take an original, like make it our own. But maybe what's kind of looming above us during all this is knowing that these songs have not been recorded by anybody else. It's like it is a little bit of pressure to make sure that like you're doing something identifiable. As like this is now like an accent song,
yeah, yeah.
which hasn't happened before. So I don't know if it really was present with me while we were recording, but I think as the release kind of looms on the horizon, that's going to be really important because it's actually really risky for an a cappella group to release non-covers.
Mm,
A lot of
yeah.
groups like start out like that. They go, "We're going to be the a cappella group that doesn't do covers," and then they're not all that successful. And then they put one cover on YouTube and it gets 500,000 views. They go, "Oh, I'm just going to keep doing that."
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's true. And all of our big hits are covers as well, so
yeah.
it's a new avenue for us. But yeah, and I feel from an arranging perspective, when you're arranging especially a pop song or something like that, like there's an element of wanting to subvert expectation in the group, especially the way that Simon arranges is there's so much like knowledge of jazz history and I think it really like it's almost comical at times like when you listen to an arrangement of his it's like wow he went there with this kind of material and it's something that sometimes yeah the statement itself can be, how crazy do you want to go? But then with original material, obviously, no one's heard it, so there's an element of like, oh, so now what's the approach? But also, I think it's worth considering that I think a lot of people hear our music and like our music who haven't heard the original either. They just hear what we do with it, and then maybe research the original. There is an element of that just through the community and
Yeah.
and through like we built up some people through like through barbershop or through
Yeah.
through pre-existing jazz communities, and then we're doing these pop covers which most of these people don't listen to, right? So it's kind of feels
That's
new.
true. Yeah, it probably depends on the song.
Yeah. So I feel like I think people will be happy with the compromise. I think there are some songs on the EP that demonstrate like quite new sounding territory and still remain song-like. But then there's still this absolutely heavy like jazz influence throughout. Especially like JB's done an arrangement with of a Mervyn Warren tune, which is just like a super like kind of like throwback in some ways and representative of all that jazz that we love. And then there's some new avenues, like a song that I wrote. I think I originally wrote as a pop song, and then tried to preserve that, but bring some jazz to it still under the surface. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, but it all glues together, I think, as well
So let me
with the
ask you
song.
about that song that you just mentioned that you contributed to this project. So when did you originally write that? Was it recently or a while
Uh,
back?
so, well, we were at that point a couple months ago where we were looking for material, specifically original material, and I felt in the place. I moved through like feelings of wanting to arrange or wanting to compose, and I'd actually composed the song about 3 years ago, which was originally like a full production because I do a bit of electronic music on the side, which is turning into a lot of electronic music on the side as a sort of passion project. And but I'd never released it, and I didn't really have anything to do with it. But I knew it was a kind of cool pop song that I think could synergize with the angle that we were going for, of like, here's some like kind of up tempo poppy stuff. The album needed that. So I took that song and I arranged it because it'd been 3 years. It sort of felt very fresh, like I could do kind of almost whatever to some degree. So yeah, I guess that so then the arrangement was only written about 5 months ago, right? And then we recorded it. Um, Maybe not even that actually. It was probably like a couple months ago, and then we recorded it a few
Yeah.
weeks back.
Well,
So
I think in typical James fashion, it was like I don't think we heard the original. Really, I think it was just like, yeah, I have something, and then some number of days later, you had a demo of the
yeah,
new version. So I
yeah.
didn't hear. I don't think I heard the original until after we like really started to work on it.
Maybe when the album's out, I can like give a little Patreon preview
I think that would be
for
really
people.
cool. Actually, people might
Just
be
yeah, I
interested.
think I think they'd be interested just to see where my mind was maybe 3 years ago.
But I think it
um,
actually, that this topic really links into what we were just talking about previously about like kind of what is the sound, and how do we what's the balance here of like if it's original, and how do people connect to it if it's not a cover, and what aspect of what we're doing is what people are connecting to. And I usually tend to treat it pretty liberally, like in the end it's going to be us six guys, and so it's our voices in a way. Like, I mean, I kind of thought of this. I usually would think this way even in other bands I've been in. Like, in the end, it's these six musicians or whatever is in your band. You have a lead singer if you're in a band. That's a huge identifying sonic thing. You have certain horn players. You have whatever it is. Like, everybody's got their characteristic. And in our case, we're these six singers. We're gonna sing. There's some like some abstract threshold for like above which we want to have our kind of chordal approach, harmonic approach. Like,
yeah,
namely, we're probably not going to sing an entire song like a barbershop song. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out because yeah, everything is fair game. But
yeah, yeah.
but like there's some like kind of, I don't want to say bottom line. I don't know what the right the right word is, but like we generally sing in 6-part harmonies, so it's something's that means something, and it's us six guys. So in a way, like regardless of genre, regardless of specific harmonic approach, tonality, modality, like that's accent. I don't know if other people hear that and kind of agree, or if they would say like, no, accent is when they do like this kind of jazz versus that kind of pop.
Yeah.
I
Be
don't
interested
know.
to hear like what people's perceptions, because I always think there's going to be a difference between what we think and what other people think.
That's of
But
course true, but even then, it's like our one fan over here is going to think something different from the fan over here. So in a way, it's like a law of averages in the end. It's like, well,
we've got a couple people who also like always after every release it's like a game to guess who arranged it, which is always fun because like sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. And I think as we go forward, like it does start to blur, the lines start to get blurred between Simon and I, which is kind of exciting, especially on the record. Like I think there were times like Simon said that like for his one of his arrangements, like he was inspired by some of the things I would do, and then vice versa as well. Like especially in some like in a new song that we're considering for YouTube, there's elements where I'm like, okay, I would want to do this just like Simon, because we're moving in the same space in the same group, and I think it's kind of cool where there are moments where we're trying to dial in together, as
yeah,
which is that's really exciting because
yeah. I
then
mean,
there
I
might be a
think
point.
it's going to happen organically the way you just described. It's pretty hard to force that, but
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe some of it's just for my own sanity that I feel like it's not really productive to sort of hyper analyze like, oh man, if we do this, it's just not either not going to sound like accent or not going to fit on the record. I mean, we literally didn't have the luxury of time. We didn't
yeah,
go through some like 1 year pre-production plan. We're not working with a label that kind of advanced us money to go out and create. It's in reality what happened was we knew we were going to be in LA in July for 2 weeks with like a studio completely at our disposal. So we said, let's make a record. That was the extent to the planning process.
mm,
And we capitalized on it. I don't think like in any way can you like fail at it knowing that that's the circumstance, because it's like that's what we were doing, and our only other way of doing things would be the way we're used to recording, which obviously is successful for us, but we wanted to have this other personality to the record. And that's the other thing. I mean, beyond just the fact that it's us six guys singing at a certain level of harmony, we given that we recorded it in a short span of time in the same space with consistent microphone setups, there's going to be this level of sonic personality, I think, that we couldn't have
yeah,
had. Even if you listen back to our EP, our first EP, that was a collection of multi-track songs that was recorded over some time with different circumstances individually to what was going on. I mean, first of all, your voice changes, I mean, on a daily basis. But
mm,
like this was like 2 weeks of like pretty good vocal health, really sounding pretty consistent, for that period of time versus like over many months where like you come in and your voice is a little different, whatever. And
mm,
I think that a lot of times when people think of, they can kind of like think that an album has a certain sound. It is that sonic personality, and I steal that term from Bruce Swedien, who engineered all the classic Michael Jackson records. When you listen to Thriller, uh, a lot of it is in the engineering because it's like,
yeah,
they recorded drums a certain way. Whatever it might be, and the producer had a lot to do with that as well. But that album was not composed by one person or arranged by one person or anything like that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, things that glue albums together can be more than just writing. It can be the space or the characters or the lead singer, or the mixing is a big one too.
yeah.
Obviously, like that could be the thing that just connects everything up. So, and obviously we've still got that road to walk now over the next few months to see how it all builds up. But yeah, are we planning on releasing a single at some point? What's
I
the
think we
how
I
people are
think
going to
we
hear
will
this?
or we should for sure. So it's just want to coordinate it and you know make it as legit as we can. And
Yeah.
we were talking about maybe that being this your song that you were just talking about potentially because it is. I mean, it was written. One of the songs we did that was written by a member of the group, and I think that would be a good feature. The one question I have is because it's in a minor key. Like I'm wondering, like, is that the right introduction to the record? That's the one thing that I've thought of that where if I'm like actually trying to be critical.
Yeah. Although it's a very different kind of, you know, minor to say Simon's because it's not like an organic,
No,
just
yeah,
like
of course, yeah,
1 5 minor 3. But it's but yeah, these are all things that I guess we have to consider on the road forward, like what represents that album the best to be the single.
Well, and
Um,
again, what's the best bridge from going back to this law of averages, like on average, what do people think our sound is?
yeah,
And
yeah,
now we
yeah.
want to bridge them to this record, which we want it to be a step forward. We don't want it to be just regurgitating. But you got to bridge people to that, I feel, with a single.
So
Otherwise, people might be like,
yep, yep, yep.
if it gets to the point where they go, that doesn't sound like Accent. Now I'm not
Yeah.
excited for the record.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna skip. See, this interview is great because we're Evan and I genuinely like this is part
We
of our
literally
thought
don't
process
know
that
what we're doing.
we're having to have this chat legit. Like, what are
Yeah.
we doing? Okay.
But again, that's me be like stepping outside myself and being critical because again, I tend to be pretty liberal with like what is the sound because I don't really like the question. It's sort of like who cares? This is us making music. It's a moment in time. It's a snapshot of where you are in life. I mean, if you really want to look at it. So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think it's personally healthy usually for me to try to like I make those identifications.
yeah,
But everything like this is a commercial enterprise, and of course, again, we're not accountable to any label. So if we were, we wouldn't be the ones making the call anyway.
yeah.
But
But it's great that we can.
yeah. So since we can, we actually have to think about these
Yeah,
things. But
yeah. But it's good to disregard that and just
I know in the end,
in the end.
what's a single even? So
Wow, this is getting profound.
yeah,
Should rein it back in before
yeah, I know
before
it's
things
true.
get pretty esoteric. But
Well,
yeah,
flipping gears a little bit, I was curious because we didn't talk too much about this, though I know a little bit about your history, so I have some idea. But like, what recording experiences we know what your recording experiences have been on your own because when we're multi-tracking, it's kind of in your room recording, so we
yeah.
know what that experience is. But recording like with ensembles or recording an ensemble or like what experiences have you actually had in the past and how did that kind of prepare you or not for this
Yeah, that's a good
endeavor?
question, and I feel everyone has a great, like, vast kind of experience, sort of CV of from different areas. And in fact, my own is quite eclectic. As you might know, I studied jazz piano. I grew up doing jazz piano, although I do increasingly less of it these days, just for various reasons. But so back when I was doing that, like I got involved with a lot of small bands, a lot of projects, and both experienced recording environments and started dabbling in my own recording adventures. And just because I've slowly turned my space here into like my main like recording space, although I've done some in other places. And as a result of that, like it's kind of word of mouth. That James Rose has a studio in central London. I'm going to use it. But as a result, like it's meant I've had quite an eclectic mix of people from time to time step in and and use it. So like I've had, I mean, this is a small space, so the maximum I can have is three. But I've had like a saxophone, cajon, and guitar, or you know, uh, I've had like an opera singer. I mean, my community is quite a lot of singers. So I've had quite a lot of like singing recording experience. And generally multi-tracking is also such a and anyone can really do it. That in some ways it's the producer that's the most important element. So I've had quite a lot of multi-tracking recording groups, and I've done some quite big. I've done a lot of work with drums for some reason. Like I've definitely gone about and recorded some drums, and it's a very word of mouth and very kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll try this out, because they all fall under the same kind of sound engineering philosophies. And finally, I studied sound engineering very briefly at a course here in London, which it's actually worldwide. It's called the SAE Institute. Very recommended if people happen to have a growing interest in sound engineering. Although I think some of our patrons are like kind of super qualified sound engineers anyway, from what I'm learning. So
Of course, when you
but yeah,
start to study a course like that, then you start to realize, like, wow, there's a lot more to know than I thought, and it can be like a
yeah,
little
yeah.
daunting, you know?
But also, like, there's like no, like, honestly, from at least maybe I will come to change my mind in 5 years, but it really seems like there's no right way. Like, even like, I guarantee you, there's music I prefer recorded on the worst equipment as opposed to in Abbey Road. Like, there's
Yeah,
so much
of course, there's no
personal
like,
taste that comes into it, and
no,
so it's
there's no
not,
like right way, but it's
yeah,
like that kind of thing of sometimes what you're like hearing something where you don't you think like how to kind of correct something or achieve a certain result, and then if you actually like kind of study it academically, you find out, well, this is like the acoustic phenomenon that's causing that, and then
yeah.
you go like, oh
You just
crap.
find out why, but
Yeah.
like, you can have like a million reasons on why, you know I don't know. It's like you can learn all about how sound waves travel through the air, and well, or not in the case maybe how they hit each other and part and the contractions and blah blah blah. And then the solution is wear headphones. It's like really, it's like kind of sometimes it can just qualify the things that you're doing, and which is great. It's good to have that info, but at the same time, it's kind of like I'm inspired by people like Chet Baker or people who kind of supposedly came at life with no like what's the word like public experience, like what worldwide knowledge, but yet they applied their own logic and their
Yeah.
own natural uh brain and ebb and flow and all that. So yes, I hope that kind of but
Yeah.
I had very little hand in, I should say, I had very little hand in the recording of this album. Like this was very much like Evan and Andrew, and Ben Bram's facility and studio, which is an immense space. So I think there's definitely things I would do differently, but at the same time, it's awesome to like have a look into how you know other accomplished musicians such as Andrew and Evan and all the other guys, how they would handle the experience of recording. And I think the result is certainly like an amazing achievement. So
So had you been, I mean, you mentioned that like being obviously playing jazz piano, I'm sure you recorded with a, ensemble, whether it was a trio, big band, whatever. Um, had you been in recording environments, as a performing vocalist where you kind of had to, nail take after take in this kind of studio way, almost like a studio, like a session singer?
I have done very little of that, but I have done that sometimes, like, and sometimes with people that give you like, I think I've had to do one little recording event where I had to just do the whole thing in one take as well,
Yeah.
like just for time reasons. And but it's definitely something I'd like to get into. But yeah, it's I don't I fall find myself falling way more on like the producer and
Yeah.
that kind of side. What about you, actually, Evan? Like, I
Yeah. I
don't know if
mean,
you
I think,
fire that
because
back at you.
I think if there's one thing I could do differently, and this topic begs at this question, about our process for this, is I would have actually addressed this whole topic in advance as a group, and not just to assess the level of experience, but just to like see what people's either preferences or just thoughts or perceived challenges with this kind of idea of recording together. I don't think we ever like said we weren't going to do it this way. Just we just didn't really actually talk about it. And I might have done that because I think I took my own experience for granted, and I haven't recorded in this format with a close harmony vocal group before. but definitely recorded this way before. Even just like being in a band that had a horn section where the horn section was tracking together.
Yeah.
I mean, I had both experiences, or all three experiences, I guess I would say, where I'm tracking by myself, and the other horn players are tracking separately, and maybe I'm first, maybe I'm last, maybe I'm in the middle.
Mm.
Um, Tracking together but isolated, so you get the energy, but basically anybody can punch anytime. And tracking literally together, which was usually the preferred way, especially in the band I was in, where we would often try to achieve like a bit of a classic vibe, this
Right.
kind of classic rock with horns vibe. So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
if we told that to a producer, it'd be like, well, you guys are tracking together, it's like, okay. And I know that my first time tracking that way was frustrating because I actually didn't anticipate kind of like just the sheer amount of effort that would go into getting the right take. And almost if I'd known that going in, we probably would have done less takes because you go in, lazy is the wrong word, but you almost go in like with that expectation. If you haven't recorded that way before, that it's like, I'm going to like do a thing and then I'm going to like figure out what I need to do to get it to be perfect as I
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
fine when it's just you. But
Uh,
when it's you and another person, now you have like the other person with the exact same mentality, and sometimes those things meet up and sometimes they're completely diverging, because like he did a fall and you did a little scoop up, whatever.
Yeah.
So and then so then make that five or six people singing, and it's like you have a bit of that going on. And I just think, um, without realizing it, my experience recording that way for bands, prepared me for not just not necessarily to perform this way or to record this way, but just for like the expectation of like how it's going to kind of go.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult if you haven't done that before. Like if you don't expect that something that's really simple could actually take an hour to do, and then
Yeah.
something that you think is difficult could you could breeze through. But when you're doing the thing that seems really easy and it's taking forever, if you haven't been in that situation many times, it can be really demoralizing, and you can think like either A, I suck, or B, that person sucks, or C, uh, like we should have moved on a long time ago. We already, it's good enough. Like why are we doing this? But it's hard in the moment to like get over yourself and just be like, this is actually what happens sometimes in this style of recording, especially when you haven't been performing the song. These
Yeah.
were new songs when we got there, so which is
Yeah.
what we wanted. We wanted this to be fresh. We absolutely did not want to just be like, let's re-record things we'd already done or do things that we only do in our live set and just now we'll have a recording of it. Now people have been hearing that already. It's like, nah. So
Yeah.
those are the trade-offs, and that was a bit of a rambling response, but
Oh, it's
you know,
it's
I
enlightening.
I did feel like I think if nothing else, kind of recording in a horn section is what sort of prepared me for just
Yeah.
the mentality I needed to be in for this session. So
I don't think yeah, it was a very new experience for me in that sense. Like, I mean, even when I was like recording by myself or or recording other people, it's, and to some degree when you're playing the piano, like as a piano player, like you're your own little entity, and every take you can slightly adjust things as well, so you don't mind rattling through takes. But with accent, it's like this is exactly the kind of it's almost like a science. Like you have to just sing this phrase exactly as it is, and everyone has to get it right or no one gets it right. And I think from time to time, uh some of us have mentioned that it is a bit like being in like a relationship with six people, because you're all having to just make sure that you all understand each other from like the philosophical level of like what are we striving to achieve, but also from the the literal sense. Well, not like literal but literal in terms of like the singing accuracy and the singing perfection, and like, okay, so we're all going to do this together. There's a sense of like trying to find that right path that we're all going together. So
yeah,
and then doing that for 2 weeks in the same space, and living and breathing together. But I think it goes to show the underlying respect that we all have for each other. that it came together so like effectively, and by the end of it, we're proud and
Well, the cool
um,
thing is, I mean, I think one of the most amazing things about the group and the talents within the group is when we would record and then kind of take a like we would sort of stop and be like, one of these situations where we were working on like a small phrase for a really long time, and it could have been because of tuning, it could have been because of trying to get something together stylistically, whatever it might have been, dynamics. Um, After you've worked for 15, 20 minutes on two or four bars, you can start to feel like, well, in the end of it, we're gonna get this done, and then it's gonna be like like the only thing we will have achieved is that those two bars are gonna sound good by themselves, and we've completely forgotten about what context they're in, and
right, yeah,
that
yeah,
can kind of be what sets you up, what sets your like attitude off. It can be like, why did we just do that when we weren't really like we're kind of keeping the context in mind. But what I've
yeah.
noticed about this group is everyone's like so experienced and talented and musical, and especially in their own kind of part of this genre that we're doing, that I never feel that that's really a risk, because I feel like even if they're not consciously thinking about it, like let's say you or Simon or JB or Andrew, whatever, Danny has this idea, we're going to try this. I feel like if we get down that path and all the singers kind of forget about what context we're in, it's like somehow instinctively we are doing the right thing for the song. I just
Mm,
think it's like because of the sheer amount of experience and talent that it's like I actually trust that if we take that diversion and do that, it will work in the context of the song, even if we're not consciously keeping it in our head while we're doing it. And
yeah,
I don't have an explanation for that. That's just like, I just think that's something I really appreciate about like the instincts in the group. And
yeah,
in a way, that's what makes the group work when we don't record together. Because when I go and then you're the next guy to go, and there's no other person to hear on the track but me and maybe some piano or MIDI or something, if that. Bless you.
excuse me.
Then it's like, the only thing you have is your instinct. Like, and you may be thinking of it consciously, or it may just be coming to you. I don't know. But like, in the end, it's like you do what you think you have to do stylistically, dynamically, like, and somehow it works out in the end. Of course, somebody has to like redo something because it's like, well, that didn't quite match. Can you just punch that? But that's always amazed me about this group. There's no logical explanation for why it should work when we aren't
Yeah.
singing together. So that to me means if we do take that kind of weird 20-minute diversion and it seems like we're in a demoralizing way, like bashing our heads against something, it is going to be worth it, because when we take the step back, it's like, oh man, that really, like, now I get why we did that, because it gave
Mm.
that little inflection of energy for those few seconds.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I was super impressed with JB's attention to the pitch as well, because there was no like nothing really in our ears other than monitoring. So like there'd be points where we isolate a phrase or a couple bars and repeat them and repeat them. But JB always has like a great sense of like where the pitch was and where the pitch is now. So it's kind of just adding to what you said about like how even if we are focusing in, it all somehow came together, even if we
yeah.
spent 20 or 30 minutes like isolating to perfect this passage. Like when we ran them together, like we all like that JB's rigid sense of where like the pitch and phrasing of the last one. I mean, everyone kind of had that as well, but I don't know, I
Yeah, I
guess
think the instinct is
um
just kind of there. It's always
yeah,
there, at least with one or two people, to keep things moving. And it's happened enough times in this group together and when recording isolated, that I really just like trust. I have so much trust for
yeah,
when we're doing something. I don't really question it. And of course, I don't want that to be, something that I rely on foolishly at any point where it's like, well, we don't even have to think anymore. But um, I don't know. I just really think that the talents and the experience come out that way and keep the group moving. I
mm,
that's usually what I feel most fortunate about being in this group is it's like I don't really have to worry that it's a bad direction. There might be different directions to go in,
yeah.
but that's me kind of being a fan of all of you guys as well as being in the group with you. So yeah.
Well, feelings mutual, I think, there's a lot of respect, and we're so grateful to also have, the patrons and fans that we do that have been kind of nothing but supportive as well, like along this journey, especially with this particular endeavor to record this. Like, I mean, it is ambitious. Like, I can't downplay like the level of ambition that to just record in one space and like give up not just 2 weeks of recording time, but then the months preceding that of assembling and talking back and forth, and maybe even cutting some things and adding some things. So to have your support, and the patrons and the fans, and just having that be a source of momentum, as after all the destination is to bring the album to you. That's something that I think none of us take for granted. So
That's probably a great thought to kind of wrap up on, unless anything else strikes you that you want to mention before we sign off.
nothing from me, but
Yeah.
what about you?
Um, Evan, same question.
Same
Uh,
question, but
no, I mean, I just echo what James said about appreciating all of our patrons, especially if you've watched this video in its entirety. What we should have done at the beginning was saying if you're watching this, we highly encourage 1.5 or 2.0 x speed, and it will help this video go a lot faster. But we
it's
didn't do
great.
that at the beginning, so. But yeah, I mean, if you've actually stuck around to the end, then you're a real fan, and you're really interested in what's going on. Which means you'll also hear me say this, which is to prompt you for any follow-up questions that you have. You can post in the comments, either on Patreon or on YouTube, and maybe we'll do another one of these if you guys think it's a fruitful thing. We'll be happy to do it maybe with some of the other guys. But Danny and Andrew are traveling in Thailand right now, so we didn't have them to kind of bring in. And James and I just kind of had a chat about this and thought it would be cool to do like a little one-on-one, something we
Hmm.
don't often do. So maybe we'll get different combinations of the guys together. But
That could be cool.
yeah, thanks for joining us, James. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Let's see, it's
And you, man, and
it's
you.
4 p.m. your time now.
Yeah, nicely done. So
Yeah, I've got that.
still day,
Yeah, I'm
still
going
got
to
some
see Corey
energy.
Henry tonight here in Boston. So it's like
Woo!
my fourth time seeing him in like a year and a half. I don't know why he comes here so much, but I don't like to
It's for
miss him.
you.
So yeah, right, it's me.
Yeah.
Great. Well, have
Excellent.
a pleasant week, everybody. Bye bye.
Ciao.